Sage, welcome, my brother.
Thank you, Mason. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, pleasure. I want everyone to get used to your voice and face because I'm going to be having you on this podcast a bunch.
Oh, thank you. I'm really stoked and excited to be here for the first time and already looking forward to next time.
Yeah, me too. So, hey, I've done a little intro at the start of the pod, but I want just give you a chance to just lay out for everyone where you're at, physically in the world, and specifically where you're at in your tonic herb journey, and maybe tell them a little bit about your business as well, your beautiful chocolate business that just like everyone refers to you as, a chocolatier, and you are, and a wonderful one. And I'm going to get in and sing your praises a little bit, but it revolves around this tonic herbal philosophy, and I've heard it from you many times, enjoying a tonic over in LA, but I want to lay it down for everyone.
Yeah, well, to touch on the chocolate first, and it comes down to it for me, the chocolate is a vehicle for getting the herbs into the body. Now, that can be done with many different kinds of chocolate in different ways, but I figured if you're going to be creating a delivery system for the best herbs in the world, why not maximize the benefits and the quality and the integrity of that delivery system to make it with heirloom Aruba Nacional cacao, have it be still raw cacao that's completely free of mycotoxins and sugar-free while you're at it. Might as well, right? If you can, why not? So it's like if you're going to build yourself a spaceship, make it nice, make it comfortable, make it beautiful, make it out of good quality materials.
Yeah, I think you actually do it as well because yours is the only sugar-free chocolate that I'll eat. There's a bunch of people trying to do it here in Australia and they're failing abysmally. And I can't pretend, like everyone's pretending that it's delicious when it's not. But right. It's like, I know, I always like eating an addicted chocolate when I'm over in LA because you're not here in Australia yet. But I bring it back for Tani, and Tani's like mad skeptical about chocolate-free things, and she's like, legit like, did you bring back addicted wellness? Like, she's like,
I'm so glad you guys enjoy it so much.
Oh, we do, man. And like legitimately, I say it like, I've said it to you. I've been on, we've done YouTubes together, and I like going off on a rant about it because it's important. It's important not to pretend that this shit's still it's delicious if it's not.
It's a big thing throughout the health world. It's my partner Ana Blanca, she calls it the emperor's clothes. So often things are either not that good, but they just have hype behind them, but they're not that good in terms of quality maybe, but the hype behind them is so good that they manage to really get out there and people are using it when they really shouldn't be. Or it's just not that good from maybe a taste perspective, but the hype is there and people just ride the hype and it gets really weird.
Yeah, it does get weird. All right, cool. So let's dive a little bit further into your little journey.
Yeah, so I grew up in California. I live still now in Los Angeles. Right. And I grew up as a vegetarian, but not a healthy one by any means. It was kind of like basmati rice and tofu 5 nights a week. And the 6th night would be pancakes. And the 7th night would be either pasta or pizza. And that was kind of like my childhood with insane amounts of carbs and a bit of soy. And so somehow I managed to survive. And when I was in like my mid-teen years, I was realizing like my energy is not great. I don't feel amazing. I've got some skin problems and stuff like that are really, disturbing my self-esteem. And when I was 16, my parents opened up a wellness center, and they had like infrared jade massage beds and infrared saunas and massage therapy. And they started selling some superfoods there. And this is amazing and incredibly fortunate for me to be able to get exposed at such a young age to some of these Eastern concepts of prevention rather than treating a disease after it already becomes problematic, and really working on your circulation and getting the blood moving through the body. And there was a local guy who brought in his products for them to potentially sell there. And he was in his mid 40s, but looked really young and really healthy. He was totally ripped. And he had this product that was a mix of like hemp protein and some other Western herbs like milk thistle and some chlorella and spirulina. And I just got to talking to him, and he kind of seemed to have what I wanted in a way. Like he was super fit, totally ripped, and he was healthy, vibrant, really smart, and looking young. Like that was something I was already thinking about at that time. Like how cool would it be if, 30 years from now, I don't age? And so I said, okay, I'm going to get on this guy's program and start blending this thing into a smoothie every day. And I didn't know what I was doing. I was just taking this mix, taking a big scoop of it and putting it into a smoothie with Tropicana orange juice. I don't know if you have an equivalent, but it's a very conventional orange juice that we have here in the States. And with some then frozen berries and a banana And I would just blend this and drink it every day. And after like a week or two, I started realizing I was having this incredible feeling of energy and clarity afterwards. Like I really felt like an incredibly clear high. And this just blew my mind because I'd never felt like this before. And I just started thinking, if this was out there all this time and I never knew about it, never knew it was possible, I never experienced it, what else have I been missing out on?
Mm.
So that was kind of like shot me off down the rabbit hole of wanting to research more about raw foods and superfoods. And then, a little bit later, getting into Chinese and Ayurvedic herbs and some Amazonian herbs. And every new thing I would learn about, I would try. And the more things I would try, the better I would feel. The better I would feel, the more excited I would get to learn more. The more I learned, the more I then wanted to try. And it was this incredible benevolent cycle that began, that has led me to all kinds of incredible experiences and really diving in deep to, especially into these traditional herbal systems of indigenous cultures.
When did you work at I know a lot of people listening would have been to LA and gone to Air One, the tonic bar there, which is an institution a lot of people have, and a lot of people new to the tonic world. And it's like kind of got a little less cachet, I think, at the moment, just like worldwide, as when it was a little bit of a micro community in the tonic herbs.
Right. It used to be kind of really the epicenter of the health world in America.
Yeah, man.
It's changed a little bit as their business has evolved. But Air One, what it used to be was a tonic elixir bar in the center of a health food store that's been around since the 70s, right in the center of Hollywood, where all the celebrities and models and everyone, directors and whatever goes to. And it basically was a setup where you could come up in there knowing nothing, and you would have a chat with someone behind the bar who is a really knowledgeable herbalist. And they would kind of give you like this 5-minute mini consultation, figure out where you're at, what you need. And it was kind of like people would come up to me there and I would say to them, well, if you could have this drink or smoothie or ice cream that I'm going to make, you do absolutely anything for you. If it was like, if this is the movie Aladdin and you could ask the genie for anything, what would you ask for? Because as you know, Mason, these herbs work on so many levels, and they just tell you what's going on with them. And you ask them a few questions to kind of get a little deeper to the source of it. And
hang on, let's go into that. Can I go into that? Because this is
of course.
This is at the heart of tonic herbalism, and this is something that's interesting. Having a business where like we've got these herbs that aren't necessarily symptom based, as we know. If you've got inflammation, if you have an extreme weak immune system and have like this crazy infection, of course, there's going to be things that we can use, and it's somewhat clinically, you can use the herbs. You've got naturopaths and like practitioners using them. But on the other side of it, as you said, if you've got like if you've got the genie and you're asking like, what do you want? What are you tapping into there? Like, I want to talk about this difference because we talk about intention all the time. Like a little more of a white bread way of talking about it is like the goals, like what are your health goals? But, I talk a lot about like, when you're 90, like feel that rhythm of like that's, that silk line connection you hear when you're 90, and then like feel that intent of where you want to be and be rocking like for you as that 40-year-old guy. And I think about that, as well a lot. Like I think about my 90 and 100-year-old self, and it's not about immortality or anything like that. It's practical. Like, it makes me think when I'm doing my workout, it makes me think about my knees and not blowing them out for my 90-year-old self. And I feel like you tap into it there. How do you approach that conversation? And what do you think are more of the deeper aspects of that side of tonic herbalism that a lot of people don't get to?
Well, I think a lot of people get stuck in the story of where they're coming from. And by all means, it's important to know your past and know the traumas that you've been exposed to and work on healing those. But so many people get stuck in the story of, I have psoriasis, I have this, I have that, I have eczema, I have acne, and that just becomes their mantra. And of course, that's not really helpful in any way.
It does become the mantra, right? That's why, like, I think that must be why, like,
story. And then you keep it the truth because you identify with it so strongly.
You know what? I reckon that's why Vedic meditation is able to charge $1,000 for a mantra, because everyone's like, just give me another mantra, man. I'll give you whatever, how much it costs. I don't care. I just don't want my mantra anymore.
Right. Because we all have such bad, not all of us, but many of us, unfortunately, have slipped into bad, self-repetitive statements about our story and who we are and what we're doing. So it's nice I always loved it. It's kind of, you see people do this where you can get just in such a groove, right? And you're just going along with your life and you're in that groove. And unless something radical happens to break you out, you could wake up and then suddenly it's 30 or 40 years later and nothing's changed. And you've, kind of probably aged at an accelerated rate and looking a little different. but your story hasn't changed. You haven't really evolved your life and done anything epic. But if you can kind of like shock people a little bit or pull them into a fantasy world, do something just to break them out of their, kind of sleepwalking a little bit, it can really open up new potential avenues. And you see doors where you previously didn't see them. And so I would love to just get people a little bit out of their logical thinking mind into the fantasy world of Aladdin a little bit for a moment there. So they would not place limitations on what they think is possible. And because they didn't know necessarily so much about these herbs, maybe they're coming in and experiencing tonic herbs for the first time. I wanted them to really break out of what they had previously experienced with, say, supplements, right? Because for most people, herbs are just a supplement. It's part of that nutrition section of the health food store that you don't really go into because there's just the weird old dude there who tries to sell you all kinds of different stuff. And it's very confusing.
Yeah.
And so I wanted just to take people out of the conventional world and just take away all their expectations, all their self-limiting thoughts, and anything that would constrain what the next experience was about to be and where they could go with it.
So you're sitting at the bar, because this is what I liked about Air One, because I feel like I got the tail end. I didn't get like the Truth Culkins days when you were there, and that like when it was like on, and also not just on, but like there was just like use as many herbs as you want to allow people to feel the transformation. That's like they're the stories I got. That was like ultimately it'd be like
there was a time before I was there where the bar was grossly not profitable and not a profit center for the store. And it basically, the approach was make whatever somebody needs with however many herbs they need and charge what you kind of feel they can afford. And so, it's not necessarily the most sustainable core business model, but it did create an amazing, they call it that bar kind of was known as the vortex. It pulled together an incredible group of people, the kind of conversations people would have there. It's nothing you're going to find anywhere else. And the kind of connections that were made. That's where my partner and I, Ana Blanca, met 6.5 years ago now. And, my pickup line to her was, hey, is that a Jinx City you're drinking? I mean, what other bar can you pick up a beautiful woman doing that?
Yeah, that's so hot, man. Did you say, is that the Jinx Supreme?
I said, is that the drink there was? They called it a Jinx City. So I
did
said,
she know what it was? Or you were like, it was like you would have been.
No, she knew. She was a regular at the bar there.
Oh, yeah.
I had just actually moved back from Australia at the time. This is back in fall of 2011. I had been living in WA for about a year.
We'll talk later about you setting up tonic bars and working over at Samudra. But back to Air One.
Yeah, so it was just a really incredible experience. And, what got me in there was I had just moved back from Australia and kind of wasn't sure where I was going. I said, okay, well, there's this amazing thing going on here with this vortex of a tonic bar. Let me get in there and learn the business and see what it's like from the inside. And I just fell in love with the whole experience there. I ended up working there for quite a while longer than I expected because just that daily interaction with people and being able to look people in the eyes as they're having their first drink of herbal elixir and see their eyes light up, that not only do they start to really feel like the stress melt away or different things shift within the body, but it actually tastes good. That was one of the big things that made the bar really special is they specialize in making everything taste incredible. And without using any sugar, without using any questionable ingredients, you were guaranteed to really, really enjoy and really enjoy it and feel like you weren't depriving yourself. Like people would go there because they wanted to have a mint chip ice cream with hot chocolate fudge sauce on top of it.
Well, that's the crazy thing.
Sugar-free and packed with superfoods and herbs.
Well, that's what I don't know if many people are like even aware that we're talking about tonic herbalism right now, because you'd be up there doing the Robin Williams genie going, wah, 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 you ain't never heard a friend like me. And going, all right, if you had your magic genie and you had your 3 wishes and the 3 wishes for your life and your health, like what would they be? I'm going to go and then I'm going to make an ice cream or a fudge sundae or a hot chocolate or a dandy tonic, and it's going to have that in there. I think that's because I like that. I like the magic. I like the fact that we can have these magical conversations and not just leave it there. You have a company, I'm sure you're aware, it's like it gets to a point where it's not fair to just leave everyone there. We need to have more of a multi-dimensional conversation as well, and have a very grounded
Right.
conversation at the same time in terms of specific results, in terms of if you're going to expect these results, there's a lot of compliance and there's a lot of investment in terms of your intent and the consistency of transforming your lifestyle and your actions. And you're going to have to get into your mind, you're going to have to get into your emotions, and it's going to be a shit fight, but it's also going to be a lot of fun. But you need that magic. I mean, like Peter Pan is my absolute like archetype. I never want to grow up, and I want to stay in Neverland all the time. But, like another Robin Williams, sometimes I want to go back and, I don't want to be like a responsible adult at the same time. But
Right.
people having that conversation, I really like that analogy, man, because what they can get, that etheric sense of what's inside this vessel that they're taking, that they're eating or they're drinking, is their intention. And then they can connect something that they're doing to tonic herbalism. I mean, did you find that happening?
Yeah, it was such a kind of a gateway drug there, getting people into this whole world. Because somebody, one of my favorite things would be when someone would come up for the first time and just come up and say, I'm really stressed. What do you have that can, help me out? As we're right there in the epicenter of the entertainment industry, which is a lot of things, but one thing for sure, people go through a lot of stress, right? As in many industries. But people would come up and I would say, okay, I'm gonna make you a drink. Just go here, sit down at the bar and sip it slowly. And you do something with some Hoshu Wu and a lot of a really strong Shen based reishi. And they would just sit there having it, and you could just kind of see their shoulders lower down a bit. They would relax. They started taking some deeper breaths, and you could just, as you were kind of watching them out of the corner of your eye, as you're helping other people, you see like their whole constitution shift. And they'll say, yeah, they'll walk out of their calm. They'll say, yeah, I feel a lot better. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. And so
that's a big testament to actually sitting down. That's one thing I always did like about Air One, and with my own practice, this morning I really took time. It helped that Aya was still asleep, but I had my hot chocolate, and I've once again, even like for me here, that experience of sitting down and experiencing the difference of what it does to my constitution and my nervous system when I'm sat down and I'm present for the tonic. It allows it to penetrate deeper, but I feel like it also allows the non-ambiguous placebo to emerge because I'm not in my mental tense state.
Right.
And that's something every story I've ever heard from Air One, from people who did get transformed, and it's surprising, and it's many. And now we've both gone on to being able to hear many, many transformational testimonials from tonic herbalism. A lot of the time it's shrouded in sitting and taking a bit of space, or having your feet on the grass and
Absolutely.
drinking the tonic in that instance. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I also, we kind of pull in both directions in many ways. Like you were talking about, you like to be Peter Pan and you like to be also a responsible adult father, Mason.
Sometimes, you know what? I was just laughing myself this morning, and I was going, is it bad that I won't answer anything from a landline anymore? Because it means I'm going to have to do some adulty kind of things.
Right.
So anyway, yeah, I'll just add that little caveat. Sorry.
Yeah. No. So as much as we were talking about, it's great to have ice creams and hot chocolates and really have these decadent, delicious experiences with the herbs and superfoods and everything. At the same time, I will say my favorite way to have somebody experience an herb for the first time is to take half a teaspoon of the herb, put it in a little cup, pour 80 or 100 mils of hot water on it, let it cool down to where they can sip it, and just sit quietly and slowly sip that drink. So it's fairly concentrated, so it's going to hit you quite fast. There's nothing else in there, no fats or oils to buffer it. And you can really get to know the herb. After that, I say, go do whatever decadent stuff you want with it. Go wild. But it's so nice the first time you're experiencing an herb, and I know a lot of people listening to this may already, even if they're into Chinese and Ayurvedic herbs and things like this already, they surely within the next few months, they will be at some point trying a new herb, I'm sure. And it's so nice to kind of get to know the herb in that pure and isolated form, so that you can really feel what it does in your body. You can, get quiet within yourself and just experience it in its purity before you go on to do different stuff with it. So you can really know it and understand how to use it for yourself in the future.
And get a little bit of the palate as well. I always recommend for people to like get a little dab on their finger and just
Yeah.
whack that, like whether it's an extract or whether you're working with a whole herb or something, just like get a little feel from it. I'm actually working with a friend to lay out the palette and the flavor profiles of all the extracts we have to help just that little inlet that if these are going to become integrated, right? If these are going to become integrated, like most things that you put into your hot chocolate or your coffee, you've got an awareness of the flavor impact that it's going to have. You're not going to want to just go and like, people don't want to just like randomly put Tulsi into a coffee, and just like not many people will do that, right? Like, and just be like,
there's
it's
certain
okay.
things that don't work in certain situations.
It's okay. It's good for me. I can handle it. Yeah.
If you're making a hot chocolate, or if you're making chocolate, Shizandra is not necessarily the easiest flavor combination. But if you're making strawberry ice cream, it's incredible.
Yeah, right. Well, I mean, that's kind of where I eventually like to see people land. It's why, we were just talking about like the look behind like the new SuperFeas look. It's kind of like the reason why we did it, because like it's gonna sit there in the kitchen integrated. And once it's integrated, you were talking about the difference between you're talking about that supplement section where the herbs were. And in those early days, everyone was just like, tonic herbs, yep, supplements, yep, they're all just like a supplement to the lifestyle.
But even now, most health food stores you walk into, the supplement section, it's chaos. Like the number of different products that they have there and the number of different mineral supplements and all of these different things. It's insane to try to think that anybody coming in off the street with no knowledge is actually going to find what they need in there. It's like a crazy black hole of chaos.
All right, well, let's talk about this. If we're going to talk about the philosophy of tonic herbalism a little bit, because if you go into if you go into your dreaming in terms of your health intention, I often find it difficult to keep on that dreaming track if it comes to a supplement. I still use supplements for often short-term intentions. I've got a couple that sit there really long term, although things like MSM I'm starting to relate to more as a mineral herb in which I've integrated. But when you look at tonic herbalism, I feel like it just starts to transcend that mindset that keeps us sick. Like I'm needing to address a problem because I'm like, right, what's your problem? You're sitting in the middle of Hollywood and you go, like, I'm anxious and I'm on edge and I'm stressed. And you go, okay, cool. Let's have some hishawu and let's have some ashwagandha and let's have some good Shen-based reishi, and you can feel an effect. But then that bridging, I want to talk about that bridging effect, that actually leads you to that long-term usage. And then it stops being about stress and anxiety, or it might, very, justifiably be about not allowing you to slip into that stress cycle, but
keeping you protected from it.
Like, how do you find, okay, so like, I feel like last year something tweaked and tonic herbs in my bubble that I'm in kind of entered a little bit into that realm and were less associated, even when they were like extracts in jars or like in, you've got your little single serve elixir combinations that, I feel like something happened last year. And I feel like medicinal mushrooms took over. No one thought anything would take over how big superfoods were 5, 10, 15 years ago. Yeah. And I feel like medicinal mushrooms and adaptogens did last year. I feel like we haven't even started yet. It's like, and I didn't think it would happen. But I feel it's got a lot to do with that thing that we can't really talk about, that's intent and your organs and your meridians and your intention, and I believe intention arrives from that connective tissue, that gooey fascial tissue. Like if we're going to get it anywhere, if it can continue to recognize the thing that's coming in that meets that intention and then keeps on driving it throughout your life, the mind can get on board more and more and more and keep on suggesting that we take that rather than that. Out of that sickness mentality into that prevention mentality, I sensed that going on last year a little bit more. And it's exciting because that's what tonic herbalism is. That's what Taoist philosophy and yogic philosophy.
It's so different from start to finish, right? Like when you're dealing with a lot of these supplements, 98% of them are in capsules. And the cool thing about the way tonic herbs have evolved is that if you go back 10 or 15 years, mostly you could only find them in capsules back then still. But now, companies like yours have done such an amazing job of getting the powders out there. And so people have to you're forced to interact with it in a different way. You have to get personal with it, because either you have to taste it directly, or you got to know how to work with that flavor to make it functional for you.
Mm-hmm.
And so people are getting to know them on a different level. You can't hide it inside the capsule anymore. So you have to be connected to what's going in your body and develop a different kind of relationship with it in that way. And it just kind of, that almost starts a domino effect, I think, of, okay, well, now I've tasted that flavor. Why does it taste like that? What is it going to do next? What's happening in my body? And there's not as much of a delayed effect in terms of, with these tonic herbs, I always say they have an immediate effect and then a long-term cumulative building effect. And kind of, I think you probably hit the immediate effect a lot faster because you're absorbing things through the mucosa, because you're absorbing it very quickly through the gut. Whereas compared to, in capsules, you don't know really, like, do those take 15 minutes? Do they take half an hour to really dissolve and get into your body? And so the experience is much more immediate, and people are getting to meet these individual herbs and learn their story and learn their background, and the education that's come from so many areas of the health world to help people do that has been so exciting. And you can tell a much more romantic and exciting and beautiful story about reishi mushroom than you can about N-acetylcysteine or magnesium or whatever it may be that people are taking in capsules.
Let's talk about long-term effect. What's your take? What's happening in the body? If we look at reishi, when we talk about accumulative benefits, how do you experience them, and how do you actually see it happening? Is it because of the constituents? Is it because of the toning? How is it toning? Do you have any insights on that?
Yeah, it's working in many ways, I think. The most prominent, I would say, is that it's allowing your body to pass through life with greater ease. And it does that, of course, in a multitude of ways. They're helping to detoxify you. They're toning your nervous system. They're supporting the liver. It's kind of all the challenges that your body runs into. So many of these herbs are able to fortify your body's natural methods of dealing with these challenges. And it's also so different from, the more synthetic supplements, though they do have their place. And there are, like you, have certain ones that I take every single day. With the herbs, they are in this natural biomatrix of all their biological cofactors that they've evolved with over thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of years. And they are kind of this really complex set of molecules that surely have great synergy with one another in terms of the different molecules within an individual herb, not even to speak of the different herbs with each other, that has been so magically crafted by nature through the evolutionary process. And that's something that you don't quite get with individual herbs. Like you and I love to laugh about how with all these nootropic supplements, that they kind of just pull together some random different individual chemical compounds that surely do have some biological effect, but the long-term impact has not really been studied. And you don't really see what these are doing in a broader spectrum in the body. And after what if you're taking this thing for 20 years? What are you going to get imbalanced in your brain? Because the supplement formulator didn't think of one aspect of one of the side effects of one of the compounds that he didn't cover. And then you're screwed because, once the brain gets into trouble, sure, it can be pulled back. There's things you can do, but it's a lot more difficult than if you had just taken the lion's mane in the first place.
Right. We would it was interesting talking about, because we both got a little nootropic. You've got your Focus green. Right. Is it right?
Yeah. So we have our Focus chocolate. That's it's the green one. Good memory.
Because it's interesting. And we've got neural nectar and lion's mane. Very popular, and you see it lifting more and more and more. And I think you were saying the same. It's been increasing more and more.
Absolutely. And it's so nice to see people becoming aware of the importance of taking care of brain health. For a while, for a few years there, it was more about energy and stress, which of course naturally have impacts on brain health. But people thinking about the brain first is really interesting.
Well, it's been interesting. I think it's been a natural progression from the people that are following along with myself and SuperFeas, where Jing exploded because everyone didn't go, oh my gosh, this is going to give me energy. Everyone went, wow, there's kidney and adrenal and HPA.
Right.
cortisol regulating, sex hormone regulating functions, in which I can use these herbs to tone, and then in my own sovereign ability, bring back my capacity to endogenously have the deep roots of energy within my body. So I have that potential. And then knowing that then regulates brain function in the marrow of the brain, which I've been hitting again and again and again and again, like in our education. Then you see the natural progression once, because a lot of people go like, man, I can't imagine I'm ever going to be off Jing. And what's the black chocolate you have?
Yes, we do a recharge chocolate, which is our Jing herb chocolate. So we have in there cordyceps, hoshuwu, cistanche, eucommia, vermania, and morinda.
Yeah, you got it, man.
And so I know you have some similar stuff in your Jing blend. And
yeah, it didn't go down the cistanche route. I'm kind of playing around with the cistanche in your pants at the moment, which I'm loving.
But you've got dendrobium in there, which is one I love too.
Far out, that herb, man. Well, I think I've told you about that story when I was just like sitting on Jing for 2 years and I just couldn't get it right. And also I didn't feel like the intention was right with the marketplace in terms of it not being like grabbing for energy. And then once dendrobium came in, it was just like, and talking to you, I've talked to you about it, like right back in the developmental stages, I was talking about dendrobium, and we were just like discussing its energetics and its sealing nature. And that's what I really needed. I needed something to seal and support the absorption and the penetration of all of that, and make sure nothing was leaking.
Like one of my favorite drinks to have any time of year really is Dragon Herbs makes this healer's tea, and it's a pre-made tea that you buy. It's got dendrobium as the primary ingredient. And they call it healer's tea because traditionally in China it was said that healers die first, unless you're a Taoist, because then you know how to protect your Jing and not diminish and deplenish all your Jing through your healing efforts. And so dendrobium is used as you said, as a locking herb and as a Jing restorative.
Well, that's been cool, because I've seen Jing get, and this is the other thing, naming it Jing, later on was just like, oh gosh, no one's searching that, that's not going to work. But it doesn't matter, because people feel it, and the word spreads like wildfire. And the amount of healers that have been getting onto that and just going, oh great, yoga teachers, we're like, actual teachers, professors, it's been wild.
People who are depleting themselves and can really benefit from it so much.
Yeah, and the people don't realize they're going and getting their foundational energy. They're getting, I talk about it being on like running on coal energy. You get the wax of your candle, which is your lifespan and your Jing and your potency, and they're cracking off wax and they're throwing it into the furnace in order to get through the day, in order to get through this massage, in order to get through this yoga class or whatever it is. But how amazing to just run off chi.
That's kind of the way I love to describe it. And I love your coal metaphor. My favorite metaphor is that your Jing is like your savings account of energy. It's your reserves. And some people start out life by inheriting a trust fund. Some people start out life with a lot of Jing they inherit from their parents that they're really healthy. Some people don't inherit anything. They start off with hardly any Jing. And we know both of these kinds of people. Some people start out with not much, and they're the kinds of people who have to work so hard to be healthy and just end up being kind of healthy because it's so difficult for them. Even, they're trying so much and doing some of the best things. And on the other hand, we all know the people who eat pizza and drink beer, and, at 60, they still seem to be doing okay, and they're making fun of you for all the health efforts you make. And, and then at 63, they die suddenly of a heart attack because they ran out of Jing. But these are people who started out with a ton of Jing in the account. And then you have your chi, which is your checking account. So this is the active. It's what you're getting your deposits in from your paychecks, and when you're eating food and breathing air and sleeping, and it's where you're actively spending money every day. Now, a lot of people are not living sustainably. They're not living within their means, and they're spending more than they're intaking, and that's when they got to tap into the reserve savings account. And you keep doing that long enough, you're going to go bankrupt.
You know what I think? Because what I was getting at and talking about, like, you see people kind of get on top of this perception that they can build back their Jing, or they can tweak their lifestyle so that they're not living in that saving, spending their savings, and also, living that coal lifestyle. Right. And then they move on to the brain. Once that Jing, they're like, cool, I've got my Jing lifestyle, I'm not depleting myself anymore. then they can move on to these brain tonics. Because I feel like the same thing as people get to, like, they think just because I'm not burning at both ends physically, but I'm sitting in front of a computer all day and they're doing the 9 to 5 and they're doing that grind, and people find themselves getting mentally depleted. This is why it's so interesting. I feel like it's why neural nectar has gone off, and why natural herbal nootropics, and whether it's a Rasayana or a Taoist tonic herb, superior herb, is coming through in these nootropic nature. I mean, we rock the lion's mane, rhodiola, mucuna, white peony, and ginkgo. Like I went down like a full power nootropic, like circulatory blend. But I find people are starting to get on top of the fact that if they are using their mental chi every day, all day, and they burn out, there's only one thing you're going to be able to draw on if you run out of that chi, and that's your will. And that's your jing. Even if you're sitting there in front of the computer, even if you hustle and smash it out.
The mind uses so much energy that, you know, the brain and the eyes is where you have some of the highest concentration of mitochondria. And so that's where a lot of the energy is being both created and consumed.
That's interesting. I hadn't thought about that. And that is
the eyes actually is one of the highest, which is really, you wouldn't think of it so much, but yeah.
I kind of think about like eyes. I don't think about the eyes that way. I always think about my friend telling me that he goes into the bush and does a lot of tracking and a lot of survivalist stuff. But he's got a daughter and he lives in the Central Coast here in Australia, and he lives like, good Western lifestyle on the screen. But then every now, like a couple of times a year, he'll go bush for a few weeks. He says the first thing that comes back, he doesn't even realize how uncrisp his eyesight had become. And the first thing that comes back, he's just like, I just start seeing colors vibrantly, and I just start seeing this dexterity and this depth. He's like, I just didn't even realize it just took on this like green wall. Or just
a lot of people don't think about when you're spending a lot of time at the computer, is your eyes are fixed at looking at one distance. And so the components of your eyes that would normally be contracting and relaxing, contracting and relaxing as you switch your focus to different depths are still for hours at a time. And that can have some really detrimental effects long-term that people don't even think about.
It's been amazing to hear the feedback because the thing about nootropics are generally, especially if they're synthetic nootropics, and especially if you're going to get a nootropic that's got caffeine in it. We were talking about it. Like, guys, if you are on like a synthetic nootropic, go and have a look to see whether there's any caffeine in it, because when you're having an experience of effect, you want to know actually what's going on. And if it's caffeine, dirt, what's going to be causing it. But as I start switching more and more people over to full spectrum extracts and those whole herbs with that multidimensional molecular relationship and community going on that's been developing for however many tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of years, you can see that there's a synergy, and there's like that same development and evolutionary compatibility within your own body, within your cellular matrix, and especially your neural matrix, and especially within your nervous system. All of those connected, of course, that recognizes the compounds that are coming in through these herbs, and therefore can more thoroughly ride the waves of potential that they're offering through their constituents and through their energy. And therefore, you can, because they're not synthetic, they don't lay down new synthetic tracks in order to work on. They're working within the body's matrix in order to help, that already exists. Let's go lay down that track. And that might lead to further memory retention, focus, or whatever it is. But it's been amazing as I watch, I convert more and more, especially students, over onto neural nectar and onto lion's mane and these beautiful herbs. And then we can go down the route of people who have, autoimmune conditions within the nervous system as well, or with, general degenerative issues going on within the brain. They get the same experience. All of a sudden you see, because there is Jing within these Taoist herbs, it's not just focused. It's not just purely on the brain. That's one of the reasons I put white peony in there.
Yeah, interesting things happen throughout the entire being.
Bang. Drop it out. All of a sudden, you've got a bit of a tree. A lot of the flow and electricity is going on within the brain. The white peony is a nootropic. It's strengthening the capillary walls. Especially important for me. I've got aneurysm in the family. I'm like onto that, right? But you see that there's a Jing development, and when then you get this, you get this report back, that what? I'm spending all this time in front of the computer, spending all this time poring over the books, or whether it's like an executive doing the same thing in the board meetings. I'm just a little bit more robust. I'm feeling pretty good at the end of the day. Then there's this experience of like, I'm starting to get a little bit of a handle on this. Maybe, do I want to do this to myself? There's less victimhood about it. You know, there's a little bit of like,
You can rise above it a little bit and see it from a different perspective once you can dominate the situation.
why it's wild, right? Like, and so this is where like anyone out there who's in that position, I generally get folks onto neural nectar and Shazandra because, you know, I just like Shazandra is my favorite liver herb, right?
Yeah.
Or the beauty blend.
Absolutely.
I love seeing that because everyone's like, Shazandra keeps the mind sharp, mind sharp. Oh gosh, is it a nootropic? Is it getting in the brain? Hang on, there's no actual like real brain and neural compounds like directly going on within Shazandra, yet the effects are like undeniable. And
Right. Well,
generally,
and it was studied in China, and they did a 2-part comparison where they had a group of students just drinking coffee during the exams, and they had a group of students taking Shazandra. Shazandra students outperformed the coffee students.
oh yeah, it's so good. That is so good, man.
And
that
it's,
is what
it's locking in the sense that I think on an energetic level, and of course we'll see in 20 or 25 years if this plays out in actual studies of some form, the locking nature of it helps you to lock in some information in a metaphorical sense, and we'll see down the line what happens, in terms of how that plays out in a chemical sense.
That's a good point, because you have to, if you're going to survive as a herbalist or even as an amateur herbalist, you need to be able to look at an astringent and look at how that's going to play out over a lifetime in terms as a disposition. And if you have the capacity to astringe within your neurology, within your emotional aspect, these people, like when people go like, oh, how much of the herb can I take? Like, can I just keep on taking it as much as possible? Like, yeah, technically, yeah. But eventually you're going to feel that there's a little bit of it's like a song. Can I use too much of this note? It's like, well, no. But if you really want a symphony going on, you might want to get some different...
At a certain point, okay, that's enough. You can do something else now.
You can do something else now.
It's funny we're talking about Shazandra with that, because Shazandra, almost more than most herbs out there, I think, almost maybe more than any herb I've experienced, has a point where it tells you that it's enough. Yeah. That's just my personal experience. You hit a ceiling and okay, I'm ready to not take any for the rest of the day.
Interesting that you say for the rest of the day, because that's what I was going to say. Because I'm like, it's a dosage thing, and this is where like people don't like. I'm liking getting more and more feeling sense within myself and within customers, talking about that fact that I just felt like I felt like I only wanted half a teaspoon of Shazandra a day, and say, oh, why? I don't know. I just felt it exactly. Same with kale.
Yeah.
Same with bananas. Same with apples. Sometimes you just feel like a certain amount. Sometimes you want to lower it. On the Shazandra thing, also just want to throw out in terms of that sharpening of the mind. And it's always important. Like, I find it's always important now, if you're getting in and bringing that folklore back in, if you lean east and start bringing back that organ association with the senses, liver, eyes, then you can run through fascial anatomy and see that there is that fascial link, and of course a meridian link that ends from the liver up and through the eyes. And you can you can start to go a little bit into the dreaming. I talk a lot about not just looking at the stars, the shiny things, but looking at the space between the stars. And all of a sudden that blows out, and you can start getting a little bit more long-term deep perception of what's going on in your body. And just do whatever's comfortable for whoever's listening. It doesn't need to be too mystical or out there. It's like whatever you're doing is perfect. But feel about, if that's something that's been laid down, we can generally get science is starting to say, yes, there's an association between liver and eyesight, right? We start to get a connection there, especially when you look at antioxidant and theory and the protection of the eyes, but then look at the fascial connection, the meridian connection, you can start to see over 20-year span, if my liver is connected and the way that my liver breathes and moves and functions is either going to bring a flaccidness to that connectivity to the eyes, or it's going to bring too much tension into the eyes, you can start to feel that angry association that occurs with eyesight, and going, just going like getting blind with anger. Of course, we've got that, we've already got that association. All of a sudden, over a 20-year period, you're going to be able to bring something into your lifestyle and your family's cultural awareness in terms of if there is a tendency towards eye strain, let's look at the liver. Let's support it with the thistle. Let's support it with the Shazandra. And maybe that's where a lot of the sharpness of the mind is coming from, through that ensuring that there's a real nice and flow and a continuous breathing. You tend to the fire, or the ecosystem of that liver long term, all that, like that sprout farm, that spring Yeah, it's that spring energy. You tend to that over your lifetime. One of the reasons I love tonic herbs is you only need to touch that intention every now and then. You ingrain that Shazandra into your lifestyle. You're tending to it, which is how you want to get. You want to get subconsciously tending to these things, unconsciously tending to these things, not unconsciously ignoring them, right? And that's what
When integrated to where you don't have to think about it all the time, and it just kind of almost becomes a part of, you become fluent in herbs in the sense that when you're learning a language, anyone who's ever learned a language knows that the first couple of years, you think it in your first language and you think it in English and then translate into Spanish and then say it in Spanish. Well, when you hit fluency is when you're actually thinking it in Spanish and it just flows out without having to process a flip over.
Sí,
and so
exactamente.
You're still taking Shazandra and you're taking it when you need it and when your body calls for it, but you're not having to think about it, all the time. That's when you hit herbal fluency and you take on a deeper level of your relationship with the herbs. So
you've gone. We're having a meeting yesterday, right? We had a big ass marketing meeting, and we're all sitting down and looking at this new year and what's laying ahead. And one of the things that just laid everyone, really out of their heads and really, really tuning in to what we're doing this year was these herbs, the spirit of these herbs, they're up and in our faces and here for a reason. They've made that bridge over to the West for a reason. There's many humans that have done so. We know many of them. We both talked about many of them, but they are here firing on all cylinders, whether it's a remedy or whether they're in their own, let's have fun as humanity. They're not here serving, they're here to play. I think that's an important one. They're not here for us. They're here with us. And ideally we're here with them so we don't destroy the landscapes in which they actually live and the cultures in which they emerge. You've done we just came out with that. I thought that was we were wow, it was real humbling. It's an honor to facilitate this coming out.
It's great to be a part of something that is so closely tied to nature. And as the Taoists would say, that, helping funnel the energy that flows through all things out into the world. And the amount of people that it impacts, it makes doing this kind of business feel very different from just about any other business out there, to where you have such a great feeling at the end of the day, when you're reading reviews on your site or emails that people have sent on how much they're enjoying your product and the feelings and experiences they're getting from it and their family and everything. It's really magical.
And before you were doing the chocolate, you were in Australia and in France doing tonic bars?
Yeah. So I was, that was my last thing that I was actively doing prior to starting Addictive Wellness was first I met this guy who runs one of the nicest hotels in Paris, Le Royal Monceau. And he said to me, okay, well, I want you to come set up something like this kind of a tonic bar at our hotel. And I was like, wow, that sounds really exciting, because it would be so interesting to introduce this novel concept of healthy indulgences that I have so much fun with to this whole new group of people who are these world travelers and businessmen that never would have experienced it. So went over to Paris and did a whole training with these guys, and it was so funny because I knew I'm going to have a real challenge ahead of me here, because I'm going into France, which is some of the strongest old culinary tradition and strict rules of how food is supposed to be done that you can find anywhere. And so I met the chefs the first day, and I was like, all right, how am I going to win these guys over? So first day there, I take them into the back and I say, hey, I know we're not really starting until tomorrow, but I just wanted to make you guys a drink tonight. And so I made these guys the absolute strongest aphrodisiac elixir I possibly could. Tons of mucuna, tons of sustanch. We had some hoshu in there, and also some black ginger from Thailand, and just everything I could get in there and still make it taste good. Brought it around with a hot chocolate kind of flavor, and said, okay, drink this, guys, go home, hang out with your girlfriends, and I'll see you tomorrow and we'll get into it. And they came back the next day. I remember there was this one guy, and he came back, his eyes were like this big and like, whoa, what did you put in that? My girlfriend could not believe it. And I was like, all right, yes, these guys are mine for the rest of my time here. They're gonna really go for it. And so that was kind of like my breaking into the French culinary world, which I didn't know if I was going to be able to do.
That's so good.
It was really fun.
So, and you set it up?
Yeah, so we did the setup there, and they integrated it as a part of their buffet, which is really amazing. And so people could come there and they could get kind of the traditional French pastries, and you go down to the next station, and there you got superfood smoothies and a hot chocolate with reishi and hoshiwu, and we did like a whole menu of different tonics that were ready to go there, and the chefs were trained on making it, and it was so cool to be able to go around and just we would have them go through the kind of the restaurant as we were introducing it and say, hey, would you like to try this healthy hot chocolate? And people were just blown away. And then that wasn't even with knowing what was in there. And then they would kind of explain to them, we have these amazing herbs from China in there, this reishi mushroom that's going to bring down anxiety and activate the intelligence of your immune system. And some of that kind of went over people's head a little bit naturally, but some of it they were like really interested and started to open doors for them. And kind of that, transition then into the next one that we did in Sydney at the Adge Hotel, which is a really wild boutique hotel where each room had its own butler. And so we were training the butler staff on how to make these similar elixirs and introduce this whole concept, to their guests. And it was interesting because it's such a novel concept, right? Most people probably by the time they're listening to this kind of have a feel for the world of health foods and kind of have somewhat of a concept of what different tonic herbs are. Imagine taking it to somebody who has no exposure to any of this before. And it's so fun to be able to deliver it to people in a way that they can really enjoy flavor-wise and texture-wise and hot drink experience-wise. And then that takes down the barriers because so many people are still in the mentality of the 80s and 90s where if it's good for you, it tastes like crap. And if it tastes good, it's going to be bad for you. And there's there's two ways to do it and there's not much in between. Well, now that's, crossing over, and you can do anything, you're limitless. And if you can get clever and get creative with what you're making, you can achieve your wildest, most decadent food dreams.
Oh man, some of my wildest dreams is to just see lion's mane and cordyceps blended into an Earl Grey tea at the retirement home for maybe Don. I think that I'm like, I don't care how they get in. And I've had that happen. Like, and this is what people like, they've got their grannies, and their grandpas and they're going through their dementias or they're going through their like little complaints about their hips and knees, or they're just worried and they just want to get onto it a little bit with them. And it's always the best because the people that respond the fastest are the ones that are just like, actually, I don't know how to explain that, but I find whenever I speak to someone who's slightly willing, who's over 80, they feel it so quick. And it's so, because they just have such an I don't care attitude. I just get the best conversations out of them and the best little, like, they're really candid about what they're feeling.
I love speaking with people at that age who are kind of like, I've seen it all, and they're always kind of one step ahead and they know what's coming.
Actually, you know what it is? They're like, they can feel it and they're going far out. This is amazing. But they've been around long enough to know, don't attach too much to it, just ride it. Like, this isn't revolutionary. This is your body doing what it does. That's right. I'm feeling great. I'm really loving this. Thank you. There's just like a non-fantastical acknowledgement of what's going on. They're like, of course there's something out there. I think this is another thing. Of course there's a solution out there. That's what I find.
They also kind of are a little bit more tied to times where people were living a bit closer to nature.
Yes, sure.
I think. Because we've never been as a society as divorced from nature as we are now. If you go back 80 years where you're getting, back into kind of like pre-World War II times where people were a lot more connected to the land and, probably natural remedies were a lot more prevalent. And it's also, I think part of it is that I always say people, when you're driving in a car, you don't feel speed. You could be going, 200 Ks and it doesn't feel that fast if you're just going consistently. But you feel acceleration, right? If you're in a fast car and you floor it, you feel that. Same with health, really. If you're already pretty healthy, you're taking an herb all the time. Okay, if I've been taking astragalus every day for the past 2 years, I'm not going to feel a huge shift just because I take it tomorrow for the 721st time. But when somebody is kind of drifting off into that last portion of life, and their health is not the greatest, they're really going to feel that acceleration as it takes them up to a different level of bodily function.
That's a really good way to look at it, man. Um, I'm going to just like you've touched on Jing and you've touched on Qi. You live in LA, man. Like, if anywhere needs more Shen, it's LA.
Yes.
So can you just I want to get your 2 cents on Shen before I then just open it up to inviting I'm going to invite some suggestions from people listening, because I want to have you back on again, and then I want to dive into some deeper concepts of tonic herbalism in the future. But I just want to round out those that three treasure insight, and feel free to go back and touch on anything around Jing and Qi if you wish. But I want to hear your 2 cents on Shen. Is it a primary driver for you? Do you think about it often?
Absolutely. It's a core component. And as I was talking about the Jing before as being the savings account, the Qi is the checking account, then the Shen is kind of like your nonprofit organization. You cultivate it for yourself because it feels good, but you do it for those around you and for the community. Because when you have cultivated the Jing and the Qi, now you have the ability to, as you're a big candle with a big wick and a big flame, now the ultimate purpose, as they say, of the candle is not just to have a big flame. It's your purpose of life is not just to have a big checking account, but it's if you can leverage that checking account and use it for something meaningful. If you're a candle, if you can give off a lot of light, it's the higher self, it's the light in your eyes. So when you cultivate Jing and Qi, if you stop at Qi, you're in trouble. Then you're just a hoarder. If you can go a little further and use it to light up the world around you, well, that's naturally going to be the ultimate purpose. And so then we look at these herbs like reishi and like pearl and like albizia that can give you a peace and, in some senses, a bit of an ecstasy and a happiness and a joy that not only does it feel great when you're experiencing it, but it has such an impact on those around you that you're dealing with every day. We've all had an experience where we're doing just fine, but we come across somebody else who's really grumpy. And if we're not well centered in ourselves, it can affect us negatively. Well, we often don't realize that that person is us a lot of the time. If we're in a bad mood or having a difficult time of it, and our Shen is not in a good place, that we can have that negative effect on others, or vice versa. You can really cultivate the Shen and have a huge positive and beautiful impact on everybody and in the world around you.
Where do you see your lifestyle focus outside of herbalism focusing? Are you generally focusing on supporting your Jing, Qi, Shen? Is it equally distributed? Does it change throughout the year?
Jing primarily, Qi for fun. To just, okay, I'm going to go do something fun. Let's take some Qi herbs. Kind of like Jing is the regular thing. And then, okay, I'm going to go exercise and go do some yoga. Let's take some American ginseng. I think that'd be really nice. Nothing too fiery. I don't need the Korean ginseng. I'm too young for that still. But go for like an American ginseng or stick a spoonful of astragalus in my mouth. Although astragalus is one that I will do all the time. That's, regardless of situation. When I was spent some time in China with
I was just going to ask about China. Yeah.
Taoist master there.
Where were you?
So we traveled around a bit. I was first in Xi'an and then Chengdu, then Beijing.
Yeah.
And went to some of these oldest Taoist temples, went to the temple where Lao Tzu was said to have written the Tao Te Ching, went to the place where Dragon Gate School was founded. This is like the ancient Taoist school that really pulled together all this knowledge to hand it down through many generations. And we've benefited a lot from that. And I would ask him about these different herbs because he was primarily focused on Tai Chi practices and movement practices for cultivation of the three treasures. But he was also quite knowledgeable about the herbs. And I would say, what do you think about Schizandra? What do you think about cordyceps? What do you think about reishi? Interestingly to me, he said, once a week, take it once a week. Once a week is fine. And then I asked about astragalus. He was like, yes, every day. Wei Qi. Very good.
Yeah, Wei Qi.
And Wei Qi is that upright energy, the protective energy that runs over the surface of your body. And so ever since then, I probably have more astragalus than anything else.
And it's a Qi tonic.
Yeah, it is. And so, I think probably the reason I'm not doing many other Qi tonics is because astragalus is so good. I'll do the occasional bit of American ginseng. I'll do cordyceps as a Jing herb, but of course it's benefiting the Qi through the improved oxygen utilization as well. And I also focus a lot on, to dip outside the world of herbs a little bit, although of course it's all interconnected, on the quality of my sleep and
Well, that's
on
actually what I was like. I
energy and
was
blood sugar
wanting
balance.
to hear more like about as well, like lifestyle wise, in terms of
Yeah.
supporting Jing Qi Shen. Like, where do you sit in terms of like what you focus on most? Is it all blend, or do you think
It all blends, I think, in the sense that, when you look at mind, body, and spirit, they don't sit separately. They're all interconnected, right? Like how well you care for your chi is going to affect how much you have to tap into your jing. The state of your shen is going to affect how fast you're using your jing. How strong your jing is going to affect how if your jing is weak, the shen retreats, right? If your jing is strong, the shen can flourish. They all affect one another. They don't stand independently in the same way that your sleep and your blood sugar and your hormone health, for example, don't live separately. When your blood sugar is low, your body has to secrete cortisol. When it's secreting cortisol, it can't produce any of the other hormones because it's prioritizing cortisol for survival.
Mm.
The old people who, back in the Neanderthal days, or going back even further, who didn't secrete cortisol when their blood sugar was low to boost up the blood sugar, they passed out and they got eaten by a tiger. Their genes didn't move on. So there's these biological methods that are in place to keep us alive, but they don't necessarily help us to thrive long term.
Mm-hmm.
So when you're stressed, you're not able to produce other hormones because your body prioritizes cortisol secretion to the detriment of all the other beneficial hormones like progesterone and estrogen and testosterone from being secreted. And these are the hormones that keep you in a state of real vitality. And they, when your hormones are healthy, your blood sugar, it gets better. When your blood sugar is better, your hormones are going to be better off. And then the better you sleep, the lower your blood sugar is going to get. Same time, if you can balance your blood sugar, you're going to sleep better because you have more consistent blood glucose levels throughout the night. Mm-hmm. So it's so important to realize that nothing is separated from everything else. You have to really take it at a holistic perspective. Of course, it can be a bit daunting if someone's first getting into it. So I say, start with the thing that's most exciting to you, because you're going to, make the most progress there. And that will give you the further energy to do the rest.
Well, what do you find are what are the things that people are most excited about generally that you've seen?
Herbs.
And what specific intention behind the herbs?
So, it starts out either for more energy or for dealing with stress, I think is the biggest two entry points for people. And then I think coming in third would be better focus. Because we live in such a hyper world these days with so many distractions and things pulling on our attention. Mm-hmm. I was telling you before, we have different chocolates with different functions, and one of them is an energy chocolate, one's a tranquility chocolate. And for the first couple of years of our business, it's really funny because the energy chocolate was always the most popular. And I would say to people, well, everybody wants energy, but what they need is tranquility. And then around came our last round of presidential elections here in the States. And a couple months before that, tranquility suddenly shot off to be the most popular. And it's been the most popular ever since. So it's kind of a fun way to keep a finger on the pulse of where people are at, to have these different functions of chocolates.
I think that's so funny. I'd love to be getting the data off like all health companies to see whether we've had reishi skyrocket, but we don't have Trump. People don't know who our prime minister is. They changes so often.
Right. Yeah. I mean, every country has its own different complications and dramas going on.
I think here it remains energy. And but you know what it is, like I find with the medicinal mushrooms here, because there's another one, I'll throw another one into the mix. I agree, it's energy. People don't actually want energy from coffee anymore. They want Jing herbs to be able to, feel that they actually have roots in the ground and then actually stand up if a wind blows. So they're actually versatile and adaptogenic. Stress, I completely agree. I think we fall on Jing herbs again, and sex hormones, and then Shen and Reishi. I don't know, I find that combo incredible. And then as you said, focus, and you start seeing these nootropics. And I think you were talking about your focus chocolates. I think they're charging ahead, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting that you mentioned that about the coffee. And I think it's great to hear that people are looking more towards the Jing there, because I think in the past 5 to 7 years, as coffee has become so popular as a health food, and sure it does have its benefits here in the US, people have neglected their Jing. They've leaned in my opinion, they've leaned too hard on the stimulant side of the coffee. And you can ignore the fact that you're depleting your Jing for a while, but eventually it catches up with you.
100%. Like, absolutely. Like, I don't think we can say that enough. I don't think anyone can say that enough, especially I think a lot of people who are listening to this are very aware of that and they've taken it on their own lives and they don't realize they're becoming the custodian in their family or their friends group for passing on that information because
Right.
friends don't let friends leak jing. And you don't want to become that annoying person that's like, hey, you should be doing coffee. I put jing herbs in my coffee. And rah, rah. You need to meet people where they're at and continue to just live your life, but allow this to become accessible. But at the same time, you care about someone. You want to be sharing this information with them. And over the years, just that consistent just sharing of that information. You were like, everyone listen to this. You are the custodian of this. Get these jing herbs out there, guys. Get people aware that coffee is a herb, right? And then they're just simply interacting with the same herb again and again and again and again and again. It's like if you have the same emotion again and again and again and again and again, you get bloody boring and you need to diversify. You've got to mix it up. What I was going to say here is what people I think in Australia are especially looking for, and I think worldwide, is everyone looks at medicinal mushrooms and they go, you know, it's all about immunity. And of course, everyone's wanting immunity because everyone's realizing, whether they like to admit it or not, that the modern medical system is not a preventative measure for actually developing immunity in all walks of that. Whether you actually are like married to traditional modern medicine and you're doing all the jabs and all the things and, you know, all the medications, if you're not, it's the same thing. It's like just taking coffee as one herb. If you're not diversifying in the way that you're developing your immune system, then you're boring and you're in a cult and you need to actually start integrating a little bit with the rest of the
Your ability to interact with the real world in a functional way becomes limited.
Exactly. And you don't have a functional immune system.
It's like the guy who comes to a party and only has one thing that he can talk about, right?
Oh, yeah, that's it, isn't it? And that's what the Taoists say.
Conversation. And so, yeah, if you're on the conventional immune pathway of, oh, I take zinc and vitamin C in the wintertime,
I'm done. And so if I get sick, I take echinacea. Well, great. That's too late.
So you're going to be taking it a lot.
You're going to be taking a lot of echinacea, and then your body's going to get used to it, and it's not going to work anymore. And the other thing with echinacea is generally if you have a viral infection and it's hitting your throat, you actually need to physically get the echinacea touching this. I learned this off Stephen Buhner. So you actually need to be putting that into a honey and letting that echinacea slide past and physically touching that infection of the throat, which is always a nice one. I like echinacea and andrographis and all those beautiful flu-busting, you know, tulsi as well in there a little bit every now and then, a little bit of raw honey to bust out that flu. Got to have that in there. But preventatively, the medicinal mushrooms, they're coming through and everyone's like, immunity-wise, yeah, great. Everyone needs that because everyone's genome is just absolutely deteriorating because we have so many viral loads coming in and taking snippets off their genes and doing all kinds of alterations to it and just like taking them down. But the thing I think, you know, we were talking about, like everyone wanted tranquility when Trump came in. I think what everyone's wanting here and around the world more is the connectivity that medicinal mushrooms bring. It's just general connectivity and communication between organ systems and general systems, nervous system, immune system, endocrine system within the body. And it's one thing I don't think
they're really scratching the surface, I think, now from the scientific side of things on how much harmony these mushrooms are able to bring into the body as they take the stress off the different organ systems and allow them to function with greater ease.
Well, maybe on that, maybe that's one of the ones that we can throw out there as possibilities for us to jump back on. And again, everyone, I'm inviting people onto the podcast these days who can focus on this world of tonic herbalism. It's coming, it's charging through. Sage is one of the only people who I know is actually really dedicated his life to tonic herbalism, and who I respect I respect your opinion, man. I'm really stoked that we're able to bring you on the podcast here and share this info with everyone. So we're going to be going down some more mycelial rabbit holes. Maybe one of them we can do is talk about this connectivity aspect of medicinal mushrooms. I know you're a wealth of knowledge, but I want to throw it out there to everyone on both sides of the pond. What would you like us to talk about? Whether it's Taoist philosophy, whether it's ancient application of tonic herbalism, more on the treasures. Do you want us to talk about inflammation? I know you're a wealth of knowledge on hormones as well.
Thank you.
From this unique angle that we can take in the Taoist tonic herbal approach, what would you like to hear us talk about? And Sage will get you back on in a couple of weeks, and we'll.
Really looking forward to it. Thank you for having me, Mason.
Yeah, all good, man. We'll oblige. We'll probably be back on the podcast before then, but I'm going over June again to LA. So look forward to hanging out, and let's do some more videos and let's do some recipes then. And by then, Yeah, I think that's going to be rad, and we'll do a couple of like lives together as well. I think so. Lots of good stuff to come. Any last little words you want to leave everyone with?
I just want to thank everyone for taking the time out of their day to listen. You're donating a portion of your life to us here and entrusting that to us. So I hope it was worthwhile, and let us know. I always love hearing feedback of what people's experiences with the herbs has been. So if you want to hit me up on social media and just let me know what experience you've had with different things, it just helps me to add to my body of knowledge on what experiences different people are having. So
yeah, so get Addictive Wellness. Addictive Wellness is the Instagram that they're going to be able to go over and follow. Do that right now, right now. Get that phone out, take it off airplane mode, because I know you put it on that because you didn't want to be disturbed. So get over and get onto Addictive Wellness. Message Sage. Sage, you also are inspiring me to get on stories and answer more health questions. You're rad at that.
Oh, that's my favorite. I love doing the Q&A on stories. It's so much fun.
You're really good at it. And so if you've got any questions for Sage, either hit him up on a message or wait for those. Check out the stories. They're really grand. Of course, you can write to me at SuperFeast Instagram or email us team@superfeast.com.au. Go over if you're in the US and buy Addictive Wellness chocolate. And if you're an Aussie, keep on pestering Sage to get out here.
Yeah, we do ship to Australia. So if you team up with a few of your friends and put together a little bit bigger order, and the shipping doesn't matter as much when if your order gets a little bigger.
Yeah, I forgot that's like not just me and Sebastian that happy doing that.
Yeah, no, we do ship a lot of orders to Australia and New Zealand.
Get on it, guys. It's absolutely the best chocolate and good doses of herbs. And Sage and I have Sage is the only other person who's willing to have deep conversations around sourcing in a way that has a lot of thought, not just commercial thought put into it, making sure the Jing Qi Shen is still present in the herbs. So, you're going to get that with these chockies.
Awesome. Thanks, bro. Thank you, Mason. Really appreciate it. Thank you.